Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Scrying Pool. This is a 2-coin and potion cost action and attack from Alchemy, and it says a +1 action. Each player, including you, reveals the top card of their deck and either discards it or puts it back, your choice. Then reveal cards from your deck until revealing one that isn't an action. Put all of the revealed cards into your hand. So that's a lot of text, so let's just quickly summarise what's going on here. So Scrying Pool is what we call a spy attack, followed by some amount of non-terminal draw. So what is a spy attack? Well, there used to be a card in the base game called Spy in the first edition, and it let you look at each player's top card and discard it or keep it there. So the point of this attack is that you get to discard nice cards from the top of your opponent's deck, and hopefully you try and leave some sort of unfavourable card there, usually going to be something like an unplayable victory card. You also get the chance to make your next card better as well, discard a bad card off the top of your deck. When Scrying Pool draws, what it will do is, as long as there are action cards, it will continue to draw cards until it finds the first non-action card. It will actually draw that non-action card, but then it stops. So the longer a chain, an unbroken chain of action cards that you have on top of your deck, the more cards that Scrying Pool will draw. So let's focus a little bit more on the drawing aspect of Scrying Pool first, because this is by far the main reason why you actually take Scrying Pool. So the amount of draw that Scrying Pool can do is very highly variable. It will always draw at least one card, but it could be as many as every remaining card that you have currently undrawn in your deck and discard piles. If you can set up the right conditions, then Scrying Pool can of course be the strongest draw card in the game. It will draw your entire deck, and it does so non-terminally as well, which is pretty crazy. So in order to make the most out of Scrying Pool's draw, of course, you want as high an action density as you possibly can. The more stuffed full of actions your deck is, the more likely that Scrying Pool is going to get off a large draw until it finds a non-action card. So trashing is very important. Of course, you start the game with 10 cards that are not action cards. You want to remove your starting estates and coppers to get your deck as close to containing only action cards as you possibly can. Now, of course, you're not always going to have a deck that is 100% action cards. For a start, you need a potion to purchase Scrying Pool, and it's not an action card. So that means that a lot of the time, you're going to have at least one potion in your deck, at least until the Scrying Pool pile is empty, and then maybe you can get rid of it. But usually, you will have at least one treasure in there. Of course, at some point, often you have to buy victory cards as well. Now, action cards that produce money are very helpful for Scrying Pool. This minimises the number of treasures that you need to add to your deck, lets you just have an even higher action density, make Scrying Pool draw a lot more easily and consistently. So Scrying Pool, because it can have these turns where you draw massive amounts of cards if you manage to play one, there's a big difference in your turns between finding a Scrying Pool and not finding one sometimes. So for Scrying Pool, this really benefits from having ways to ensure that there's a Scrying Pool on top of your deck or in your next starting hand so that you can start drawing straight away. One of the worst things that can happen with Scrying Pool, especially if you're using it as your only source of draw, is not actually finding one. There could be the difference between drawing hardly any cards at all and basically drawing your entire deck, is you just got to find one. So always be on the lookout for things that really help you out to do that. So I've got some examples here: Scheme, Courtyard, Save. Just things that either top deck Scrying Pool or guarantee that you get one in your next hand. Just a small number of examples. You'll have seen examples like this before in other videos. One interesting synergy with Scrying Pool's draw is that some cards let you discard a cards en masse for some sort of benefit. And these cards are really nice for Scrying Pool because once you've drawn your entire deck, you can just discard only action cards, and those if you have another Scrying Pool in hand, it then guarantees that you will draw everything back again. So, for example, with Artificer, you can discard 5 action cards to gain, for example, another Artificer, and then you play Scrying Pool and you will draw back all of those 5 action cards and also the Artificer you just gained all at once with the Scrying Pool. So you can just keep doing it again. Vault, for example, Vault Scrying Pool is a well-known way to generate huge amounts of money. As long as you have another Scrying Pool in hand, you can play a Vault. You can discard everything except that one Scrying Pool, or at least all of your actions, and then you draw all of them back up again, and you just get to repeat a number of times with Vault. But aside from these particular very high-powered examples, even stuff like Mill is still useful there. You can just play a number of mills, discard a number of action cards, draw back up. This, of course, only works as long as you're actually drawing your deck and you still have spare Scrying Pools. So let's talk about the attack part now. So a lot of the time, you're going to be looking to discard action cards from your opponent's deck because they are most likely also using Scrying Pool, and you would like their Scrying Pool to not automatically start drawing a lot of cards. Now, when they play their Scrying Pool, they get the opportunity to discard what you leave on top. So if you left a victory card on top of the deck, they do get the opportunity to discard that away. However, it's still worth trying to set them up with a victory card guaranteed, because that sort of wastes the opportunity for that Scrying Pool self-inspection to have done something more useful for them. So it's not always the case that you just stop discarding as soon as you find the first victory card. Sometimes you want to keep discarding the top card of your opponent's deck because you know that they have some sort of key card in their deck and you want to find it to try and discard it. So that could be their Scrying Pools, or perhaps their potion. Stop them buying another Scrying Pool this turn. Normally you might do this when they are at the top of their shuffle, because you know that anything that you discard is going to be right at the very bottom, and they're going to have to draw through the entire rest of their deck to get there. In general, though, you don't necessarily know it's in the hand. They might already have a Scrying Pool in hand or something, so it's fine to just stop. But occasionally, take notice of what your opponent has. If there's just one card that's really good for them every turn, you might want to just keep hunting for it to try and discard that one particular card. Make it harder for them to get it. So the attack part of Scrying Pool has a couple of synergies. This is normally various forms of attack that also interact with your opponent's top card. So Jester, for example, this is a card where you might specifically want to leave a Scrying Pool on top of their deck, and then you play a Jester and reveal it, and you get to get a copy of it for yourself without having to buy it. Similarly, Swindler specifically trashes the top card of their deck, so you might want to set up a nice 5-cost card that they have, or one of their trashers or something, and basically get rid of it. And Chariot Race, you specifically hunt not just for any victory card like a province on the deck, but you want a very, very cheap card so that you can then play a load of your own Chariot Races and score points. Of course, with Chariot Race, you have to watch out that you haven't already drawn your entire deck with Scrying Pool first, so there is that to watch out for. But these are just, again, some examples that care about the top card of your opponent's deck, and there you can use Scrying Pool specifically to help these cards out as well. Okay, so when do you buy Scrying Pool? So first of all, while it's true that you don't necessarily need all that many Scrying Pools to actually draw your entire deck, you still need to find one to get your turn started. So it's usually a pretty good idea to try and get as many copies as possible. That's really nice for reliability. The more Scrying Pools you have in your deck, the better the odds are you actually get to start with one. And of course, as you start adding victory cards later on in the game, you're probably going to need multiple anyway. So it's pretty common to see people just buy quite a lot of Scrying Pools. So it's a pile that tends to empty in games when Scrying Pool is worth going for. And bear in mind that even if you've drawn your entire deck, if you have bought extra copies, they're not necessarily wasted because you can keep playing them to keep attacking. Scrying Pool is very, very cheap, so you're usually safe to open with Potion, and you're not that likely to miss being able to buy it. So if you want to buy as many Scrying Pools as possible, then Opening with Potion is fine in the Scrying Pool board. The usual caveats apply around opening potions, such as the fact that it's harder to actually get a 5-cost card. If it's something like your only Trasher is Sentry, then maybe you don't want to open Potion, and you want to get thin first and then catch up and buy the Scrying Pools a little bit later. So even if your own action density is currently very low, Scrying Pool still has a chance to help cycle through your deck, because it will always have the option or the possibility to discard a bad card from the top of your shuffle. So if you think about Scrying Pool in a deck that's mostly just your starting cards, and you discard a useless estate off the top of your deck, and then it just draws a single card beyond it, well, that's kind of like playing a laboratory, right? Like it's like drawing 2 cards. The estate didn't really matter a lot of the time, but you still got beyond it and cycled past it. So this means that Scrying Pool, still useful before your deck is completely under control and well trashed and full of actions. So this is another reason why you might want to buy Scrying Pool early, get started on them straight away. Like, it still has some use, even if you have no action cards at all. And that cycling will help you find your potion quicker, so that you can start buying more Scrying Pools sooner. So when do we not want to buy Scrying Pool? Well, Scrying Pool's value largely based on your ability to handle a deck that is crammed full of actions. So the 2 main reasons why you would want Scrying Pool are that you just can't deal with lots of actions because there's no villages, but also because there's no trashing as well, so you can't actually get to the high action density that you need. It can take a while to amass enough copies of Scrying Pool to get your deck going. Scrying Pool can sometimes feel pretty slow to ramp up until you achieve like a certain amount of action density, and then all of a sudden you start getting these really strong turns. What that means is that your deck sort of goes pretty slow for a while, and then eventually it will kick off and get really, really good. But if the board is too fast, then it's too fast for Scrying Pool. Potion in general, by opening Potion, you are sort of also slowing down yourself a little bit sometimes, so you've just got to be able to try and judge how fast you think the king is going to be. Like, if there's something that seems really, really fast combo, then even if the rest of the board seems good for Scrying Pool, it might be too slow. It depends. This is just my experience. There's no way to really give super general advice on this because that's so board dependent. One notable synergy that I wanted to call out with Scrying Pool, it's a very, very good card with Scrying Pool, is Peasant and all of the cards that come along with it. It's called the Peasant Chain. So Scrying Pool really likes access to plus buy because it's a cheap potion card, and so that way you don't waste extra money that you have, and Peasant gets you plus buy. Similarly, Teacher as well can sometimes stick plus buy on piles. Soldier is very notable in that it generates you more money the more attack cards that you have played this turn, and Scrying Pool is non-terminal draw that is also an attack. And what that means is that you are very, very likely, before you play your soldiers, to have played quite a lot of attack cards because you're playing all of your Scrying Pools. And so the fact that Soldier is giving you a lot of action-based money, not only is it generating a huge amount, but as all of your money is coming in action form, which is really good for Scrying Pool, makes it much, much easier to draw your entire deck because you don't need as many treasures. Disciple will gain copies of Scrying Pool without needing to actually buy them, which is nice. You still need to have bought one Scrying Pool in the first place, but after that it will get you more copies without having to worry about actually finding and playing the potion. And of course, being a non-terminal that you want many copies of, that sometimes goes really well with Teacher. So like, even if there's no other village, but there is Peasant, well, you might be able to stick the action token on Scrying Pool, and now it's a village as well, and that will help you set up. So pretty much everything in the Peasant Chain actually works really, really well with Scrying Pool. So maybe that's just because Scrying Pool, it's draw, and that's really the one thing that the Peasant Chain is actually missing. It's got basically everything else. But the fact that it's an attack, it's a non-terminal draw, it's really good. Like, just very, very strong with Peasant. So just some final small notes here that we didn't really have room for in other slides. Scrying Pool is very strong. It's actually in the top 10% of all Kingdom cards in the latest community rankings, which is really, really high. It also counters Ghost Ship really well. You can just top deck 2 action cards if you've got a Scrying Pool in hand, and then you just draw them and the rest of your draw as well. So it's like the Ghost Ship attack doesn't really matter. So that's it for Scrying Pool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to the online client. We are going to generate some random kingdoms that have Scrying Pool in it, and we're going to see if Scrying Pool is a good card on these boards. So first thing here, we have Ambassador to Thin. That's good. We have Scrying Pool as the draw council room as well. There's Golem. Now, Golem is the only village. That's really, really awkward for Scrying Pool because Scrying Pool is too good at drawing your cards to actually work with Golem. And that's actually a problem here. There's no way to easily non-terminally discard your cards so that they can get hit with Golem when you draw them. So it looks like that means that we actually don't really have a village, realistically, if we're going to go for Scrying Pool. That's a problem. How would we actually play this kingdom? So Ambassador's really good regardless, because it will junk your opponent if they don't do it. So you're going to do that. Maybe we actually don't use Scrying Pool here because there's no village. What are we going to do otherwise? Well, there's Vassal, and it can hit stuff like Poacher and Wishing Well. There is Poacher to discard action cards, but unless you empty 2 piles, you sort of need to empty 2 piles to do it, but it could work as well, and then you could play Golem. But what 2 piles would empty? The only plus buy... Oh, no, there's pawn. Sorry, there's pawn plus buy, so that's fine. Well, you could draw it with Scrying Pool. You could discard a card with Poacher and then play Vassal to hit it. That's probably going to be easier than Golem, and that gets you your money and your pawns as well. Maybe that's what we do, but we have to actually empty a pile first. So we're going to open Ambassador, and I guess we get a potion. And we are going to pick up pawns. Maybe we don't get potion straight away, we just pick up a bunch of pawns first. No, I think we do. I think we get potion and Ambassador. If it's a 5-2, we just get Ambassador and pawn. And then we start getting vassals with the expectation that we probably won't be able to play that many, and poachers. And then using the buy from pawn, the money from poachers, we eventually try and empty one of these piles so that we can then start using Poacher to discard cards for Vassal. And we never bother with a Golem. It's not going to work. And maybe if Poacher empties, we might be able to go for Golem, but we also need our Poacher discards to make Vassal work. So it's a little bit tricky. So I think we just sort of ignore Golem. We're never going to go for Bandit. And that's sort of what our deck is. We've got pawns, we've got poachers, we've got vassals, we've got Scrying Pool, we've got Ambassador to Thin. And I guess that's kind of what we're going for. And, we get to constantly attack our opponent, both with Scrying Pool, potentially Ambassador as well. We can leave a single copper in our deck, just make sure that we've always got something to junk our opponent with. That will be our terminal, just Ambassador, I think. So we are going to use Scrying Pool here. What's the alternative? Well, under the onslaught of Ambassador junking, there sort of is no alternative. You have to get Thin, and then Scrying Pool sort of works out over anything else, I guess. I guess the alternative is you just ignore it and you just start mass vassaling with Wishing Wells and Poachers anyway. But when the Poachers, a pile empties suddenly, that's not very good. You need draw, and for that you have Scrying Pool. So Golem does not seem very good. Okay, so what's happening here? We have Salvager and Replace as trashing. We have Bazaar and University as villages. And University also gets us to gain, Bazaars and stuff, which is really nice. Bazaar is money in action form. Otherwise, we are going to have to rely on either treasures, or we gain action cards of the University and then we salvage them. That is also possible. There's Ghost Ship, but I'm not too bothered about it in the face of Scrying Pool, because this looks like a very good Scrying Pool board. So we're definitely Are we definitely going to open potion first? Like, we can open potion because we probably want to get universities first. We sort of want some universities, but we also want scrying pools. I'm not sure the order, but we have to get thin first. So we really want salvager, but I think we have to go for potion instead first. And the university can start maybe even gaining islands and bazaars. And we can use the islands to help us thin instead of salvager, perhaps, because it's easy to gain them with the university, like get some bazaars. And eventually we can go for a replace. We are probably going to just buy some golds later on in the game as a way to actually afford getting up to province. But this seems like a simple scrying pool deck. We draw up, we have university to gain a load of actions. We can draw them very easily with more scrying pools. And then we're just, like, replacing some of them into golds and then replacing the golds into provinces, or we're just playing the golds and buying provinces and stuff. Yeah, so I'm not sure the order that we take these cards. I think we get the universities before we go for the scrying pools, but we don't want many universities until we start needing to get scrying pools very quickly. We'd rather play the same university over and over, like every turn, consistently, rather than just loading our deck full of universities. So I think we get like one university, maybe a second, before we start going for the scrying pools. Could this be a board where it's actually worth getting more than one potion because we just want so many copies of these cards? Maybe. We've even got a courtyard to help us top deck a scrying pool each turn. That's really nice. Transmute. Obviously we ignore transmute. Okay, so scrying pool, key card there. It is our draw. We get to ignore the other two draw cards. Unless we need plus buy from Council Room, but we have also got Salvager, it's probably more useful. Here, what do we have? We have Sentry and Trading Post to trash. We have Festival as a village. One thing that's nice for Scrying Pool is that it doesn't matter if your village is a stop card necessarily, so that's really nice for Scrying Pool. We got Scrying Pool as our draw. There is Witch, which there is Sea Hag as junking attacks that we want to do. There's Ghost Ship that we don't care about because of Scrying Pool. So we actually want to hit Sentry as soon as possible. I'm not too worried about Sea Hag if our opponent opens it. So I actually want to open Wishing Well and a silver double Wishing Well. And we use that to try and hit 5 first, and then we get a Sentry. Then we pick up a potion and start going for Scrying Pools. I don't think we need the Scrying Pools straight away. When we do start getting Scrying Pools, like the fact that Sea Hag top decks a curse doesn't matter, because we get to just discard it with Scrying Pool, and then we can easily, hopefully, trash it later on with Sentry. Might actually be difficult to trash curses, because we draw so well. We're highly likely to draw curse before Sentry gets to work. I would much rather have Witch, I guess, with Festivals rather than Sea Hag. I suppose it doesn't really matter. We don't really need the draw from Witch. So Sea Hag is fine, but we're not going to open with it because we need to get the Sentry first. Eventually we have Outpost to make the Scrying Pool engine just ridiculously good. It's a little bit unfortunate if we don't start our Outpost turn with a Scrying Pool and we get like 3 Festivals or something, but that's just going to happen. There's not really that much we can do about it. So maybe it's helpful to have a few Smithies in there eventually, but we're going to be drawing a load of cards, playing a load of Festivals for buys and money. We may even have some treasures. I think we're going to have to. We won't have that many Festivals otherwise, but we're going to be junking our opponent. Really important to try and make their Scrying Pools not work. And yeah, Ghost Ship we don't really care about. So yeah, another crazy engine, and Scrying Pool is very good here because there's a very good engine and it's incredible draw. And we get to sort of ignore the other draw. What do we have here? So there's only Trading Post to thin, and that's really bad because Trading Post gives us a lot of silvers, which kind of stinks for Scrying Pool. The only village is Nobles, which is very expensive. The draw is Scrying Pool, and there's also Torturer as well. Is Torturer good in the face of Scrying Pool? I think yes, because okay, they can discard down to 1 card in hand, which is Scrying Pool, but what you really want to do is play enough Torturers to make them gain curses. And the curses are really bad, because even if they pick up 2 of them, and they trash them with Trading Post, they're still forced to gain a silver. And this will very slowly over time. force them to have a lot of treasures, and will make it very hard to draw. Now, you really want to draw here because, in theory, there is bridge payload. In practice, there's such little village space because it's nobles and it's hard to get that you're probably not going to do much bridge stuff. Apologies, I had a sneezing fit there. Where was I? So village space is very limited here, and really you want to be playing a bunch of torturers, I suppose. So we're going to have a smugglers to try and get nobles and some other good stuff, but I don't know how well we're going to be able to play many bridges, which is our only source of plus buy. We would like to play at least one. Otherwise, we've got merchant as actions. This is where the buy from bridge would be really useful. Maybe then we don't actually want that many torturers. Maybe torturer, we have to invest so much in torturer to gain curses for our opponent, and they do get to just discard down to one card in hand a bunch of the time. I don't know, it's tricky because I would really like to play a bunch of bridges and get a load of merchants. That seems really good for Scrying Pool, and especially because we're going to have silvers from Trading Post. But man, in the long term, the torturer really hurts them. So I think I would like to do that. I guess winning the noble split is just so critically important here. You've kind of got to do that first, but you've got to get to Trading Post first. So how do we open? I'm not sure I really like Vassal all that much, but it is nice that it's an action card instead of a silver. So I guess I open Bridge, and I want to say silver, but maybe it's just Vassal, and I'm sad if they collide. And I use that to try and get a Trading Post. So Vassal Bridge, and try to get to Trading Post. And then I've got to get the nobles, but I do need to take time out to pick up a potion as well. But I've really got to try and hit 6 as often as I can and win that noble split. I might get a smugglers at some point, but probably not straight away. And at least not until my opponent looks like they're going to be going for 6. I don't really care too much otherwise. So Scrying Pool, very important here. It is our draw. We need to not use nobles for draw. We want to use it for villages. And, we got torturers as well, so that's a bit of draw. But yeah, Scrying Pool, very important. Like all these engine boards, Scrying Pool is a very, very good engine piece. And here comes the final kingdom. So, what do we have here? Sorry, I don't think I went onto this view in the last kingdom. We have... Where is the trashing? There is no trashing, so that's off to a bad start. There is ironworks that can gain us mining villages and wishing wells, or even regular villages and harbingers. Is the engine worth doing? So there's no plus buy, but there is an outpost. The outpost turn could be good or it could be terrible. There is laboratory, but with only one gain per turn, do we even really want the potion? I guess you'd open ironworks first, but... So, if we don't do a Scrying Pool laboratory, load of villages, and use that to draw a load of cards and then play a bunch of cantrips, what are we even doing? What's the alternative? Navigator big money? Philosopher's Stone? These feel absolutely terrible in every way. This is a very weak board, that there's 2 villages, and there's Philosopher's Stone. But there's no real payload for the engine beyond Outpost. And Ironworks is just gaining you, a bunch of villages, which is very poor. I guess there's Navigator as action money, come to think of it, and we do just have a ton of villages, so we can actually use that. So, I think that's what we're going to do. A Navigator, at least, might be able to help rearrange your next Scrying Pool. If you have 4 actions and a treasure, it can put the treasure on top, then you can discard it with Scrying Pool, and you can draw the other 4 actions. Or if you just get a load of treasures, you can just pitch that hand. So I guess that's what we do. We're going to have Scrying Pool. The thing is, there's no trashing, so we already actually have a load of money in our deck, don't we? So how good even is Navigator as payload? It would be nice to have a load of cantrips. Maybe then we open... Do we open Wishing Well and Ironworks, or do we open Wishing Well and Potion? And we just get the Scrying Pools first. And then we get an Ironworks and we just start loading our deck with actions. It feels very slow, but I don't honestly see what's better. Maybe Navigator Big Money is just better, but we are getting Scrying Pool attacked, is the thing. And it's not nothing, right? It's not the greatest attack in the world, but it is consistently leaving junk on our deck. Then again, there is Navigator to get rid of it, but it's just a very weak board. I think I'm still doing the Scrying Pool thing anyway, just because it's very good. I would like to draw. I would like to be able to play Outpost as often as possible. That sounds really good. I don't think I ever really need to buy any silvers or golds. We'll just have a load of coppers and maybe some navigators at some point. So Scrying Pool. I think I still do the Scrying Pool engine here. Anyway, that was 5 out of 5 for Scrying Pool. We just got a bunch of engine boards, and this one, I guess not really an engine board, but it still felt good anyway. Now, and that tends to be the case. Scrying Pool is very powerful. It's just incredible draw card, really. So anyway, I hope this was useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.